practice, my inspiration behind it is the pigeon. And the pigeon is also a dove. And we know that the dove, especially, has been a great symbol since ancient times, mainly because pigeons and doves were the first domesticated birds. And I know there's some people that love birds, and I know there's other people that really don't like birds. And birds in general represent a freedom, and they represent messengers. Think about how, they're here on earth or up in the trees, they fly into the sky. They're basically kind of thought of as the messenger between the heavens and the earth. And there are many biblical references that talk about the dove. So there's many religions that have also brought the dove in as part of their symbolism. Now, part of the symbolism of a pigeon slash dove is fertility, freedom, peace, love. I'm trying to think of some of the others. There's a few more symbolisms for that, but we're going to stick with those for now. And so in our practice, we're going to be working with eye of the needle. We'll be working with the half pigeon. We'll work with deer pose. And then eventually we're going to build up for a couple different variations of pigeon. And when we get to that pose, if I don't remember, you can make it more restorative. In fact, I think it was yesterday in the restorative practice, we put a bolster under the hips and blocks underneath the arms. So therefore, it's not getting as deep of a stretch in the pelvic floor, or it's providing a little bit more space for the knees. So the knees aren't getting as much flexion or weight descending down upon them. So when we get to that pose, please cater to your body. Have some props available for today just in case. And we'll get started. And if you would, please go ahead and get on your backs, and your legs can sprawl out and your hands can rest on your stomach. So when you come down to the ground and take corpse pose, separate your feet about hip distance apart. Your hands can again rest on your stomach, and your eyes can gently close. I want you to consider places where you've seen lots of pigeons or doves. I automatically think of Europe, because when I used to go to Europe, or when I lived in Europe, I would see tons of pigeons around monuments, cathedrals, certain squares. And some people find pigeons to be annoying and noisy. And then other people love to feed the pigeons. We represent peace and love oftentimes when we see the dove. And doves are even sometimes released at weddings as a symbol of love. Breathe in a diaphragmatic way. Allowing the belly to rise on the inhale and to fall on the exhale. Control the breath so it's nice and slow, slow and steady. And as you continue to breathe in and out through the nose, I'll share a little bit more symbology. So along with fertility, peace, love, and freedom, it can also represent good luck, fortune, harmony, mercy, transformation. In ancient Mesopotamian times, it was associated with the goddess Ishtar, and she represented love and sexuality, right? So that goes back to both love and fertility. And since we'll be working with the pigeon pose today and other poses that are related to it, know that this operates more into the hips. The hips are a part of the second chakra, which is about procreation and fertility. And it's also about what we're birthing in life, what we're birthing as far as our creative ideas or projects. In Judaism, the dove was often representing the Spirit of God. With Greek mythology, it was often used as a symbol for worship. In fact, outside the gates or the doors of any temple related to Aphrodite, one of the Greek goddesses, there were always doves. Some associated the dove with Zeus. We know that in Christianity, we often bring in that symbol of the dove. Just think about the story of Noah and the ark and sending the dove out. Or when John the Baptist was baptizing Jesus and a dove swooped down to give him the sign of the Holy Spirit. It's used in Islam, but I'm not sure how in Islam. And it's even respected and known in Asia. And there is a specific Japanese war god that used the dove as his messenger. Let's go ahead and begin to prepare the hips for this. So let's bend the knees. And let's cross the left ankle over the right knee and pick up the right foot. Lace your hands behind that thigh bone. And because we're going to be a little bit more yin today, you can just flop the right heel down towards the floor, even though it's not going to touch. You don't necessarily have to flex or activate the ankles. We are attempting to keep the low back anchored to the floor so the buttocks isn't curling up. And I suggest closing the eyes just to really tune in to see whether or not you have a lot of density, congestion, tension on this side. And just a simple handhold is enough, but remember, if you ever want to play your edge of flexibility, you can gently hug the leg a little closer in on your out breath. Now, on your next inhalation, let's fly the right foot upward and point the toes. Feel that stretch across the top of the foot, the front of the ankle, and even the peroneal muscles that attach to the shin. And then flex the foot, so you're pushing up through the heel, activating the Achilles tendon, the calf muscles, and a little bit more of the hamstrings. And then go back and forth as you breathe. Inhale, point the toes. Exhale, flex the ankle. Inhale, point the toes. Exhale, flex the ankle. And then start to rotate your foot around and around several times. And then reverse that flow so you're going the other way. Now gently release that right heel. all the way to the floor. And we'll cross the right ankle now over the left knee. Pick up the left foot, lace your hands behind the leg, gently squeezing towards your upper body. Noticing the effect it's having on the right hip, the more masculine side of the body. You may have more or less tightness or tension than you did on the previous side. So just be in that state of wonderment and assess for yourself. Remember, if it builds to the point of intensity or where you hold your breath, I would loosen the grip in your arms. If you find that the hip is loosening, you may want to hug it in more. So it just depends on your experience. Like right now, I'm feeling a lot more tension on this right side. Now, on your next inhalation, lift your left foot upward and just keep the toes pointed skyward, because I want you to feel what else it's affecting. And then go ahead and flex the foot, jutting up through your heel, maintaining as you breathe. And then flowing with breath. So inhale, pointing. Exhale, flex the ankle. Couple more times. And circling the foot. Notice where you're a little bit more limited in that range of motion. And then reverse that flow. And then softening that knee, descending the left heel. Release your hands, and you're going to keep your knees tucked in, but you're not hugging them with your arms. In fact, you're going to open your arms out nice and wide and let your knees roll to your left side, taking a supine twist. Now check in, because this may be perfect for you. And this may feel really inviting. However, if you want to go to alligator pose, try straightening your legs and maybe catching the big toes with your left hand. Again, that's an option, voluntary. You have a choice to keep the knees bent. Now I want you to breathe up and through the right side body. I'll share with you guys, I woke up this morning feeling fine. And then as soon as I got out of bed, I had this stabbing pain in my abdomen. I took a shower, it didn't help. I got out of the shower and laid on the bed and did a pretty good back bend over the edge, thinking it would stretch it out. It didn't help. I crawled up into child's pose. That usually helps with abdominal pain. It wasn't subsiding. And I was a little nervous about going to teach my earlier class. As soon as I got to the studio, I got back in child's pose. Still hurting a little bit when I started the practice. And it was after doing these first couple poses that we've done, it completely went away. Now bend your knees, roll back to center. So my point in that being, sometimes it takes several poses and a little bit of time to remove that pain. It may not be immediate. Roll the knees to the right. And then check out your low back. Check to see if your left shoulder is hovering off the floor. If the shoulder's hovering off the floor, or if you're feeling a little limitation in your twist, I wouldn't straighten the legs. Just be here. You can even add a prop under your knees to lift them up to ease the low back and to sink the left shoulder to the floor. And then, of course, if you want to try the alligator, you can straighten the legs and take a hold of the big toes with your right hand. So I think I realized when the pain dissipated that it was just some trapped gas, that was creating that stabbing sensation. And I haven't felt that in years, but I did occasionally feel it when I was a flight attendant. Take one more deep breath, knowing that this twist is good for our digestion. It's good for other things too, but we're just going to stop there today. And then let's bend the knees and let's roll back to center. Now catch your knees this time and hug the knees in. So I was sharing with the group earlier today that this is called the wind release pose. Look, it's very similar to child. So this is another good one in case you ever have the same symptom that I was having this morning. Just a few poses and giving it a little bit of time with some deep breathing, hopefully will resolve the issue. But this is something that, you really have to do with babies. I'm thinking of you, Wendy, about to have a grandbaby. So you would just push the knees of the infant up towards the belly, and you would take their knees from side to side, just like we did with the twist. And then you would straighten the legs back out and then repeat. And it always helps. All right, now that we've been in the wind release pose, take one more deep breath. And then clip your hands up underneath the crease of the knees, fly the feet up and rock and roll forward. When you come forward, you're going to take your left shin out in front of you and see if it's okay for your right foot to come back alongside your hip. Now I'm resting on the top of the foot. Some people like to flip to the inside. For this particular pose, it's not going to matter. But what does kind of matter is check in with your knee and your heel in this pose of half pigeon and make sure it's in line with the framework of your hips. And then lean forward onto your fingers, lift up energetically, and exhale, hinge down. And when you hinge over and down, you can prop onto your hands if that's better, to create a protective shield to not go any deeper. You can also drop to Sphinx arms or fold more fully. So notice half pigeon is similar to deer, but it's different than deer. And this one's going to have a little bit more of a deep stretch in the hip. We are folding straight over that calf. And then if you close your eyes and maximize your breath, especially creating a longer and stronger exhalation. On your next in-breath, gently come up. And I turn my back to you for what we're getting ready to do so I don't confuse you. Your left hand is going to prop just behind your back. Your right arm is going to reach to the side. And then you're going to push down through the right knee, shin, foot, left hand to come up. And then as you exhale, sit down and then fan your right arm back. Inhale, sweep the arm overhead as you lift. And then exhale, come back down and open the right shoulder. One more, inhale, coming up. And exhale, pouring back down. All right, we're gonna swap sides here so that the right shin is in front of you. And then that left foot is alongside your hip. Create that alignment where it's in line with the framework of your hips. Lift up through the crown and then exhale, humbly fold. Finding where you want to maintain the hold, where you can still openly and comfortably breathe. Hopefully through today's practice, if you are feeling really dense or tense in this area, it will become much more pliable for you. Maybe you'll find it's easier to move around. We're going to be incorporating a little bit of a flow into our yin practice today. And I know in yin they refer to pigeon as swan, but we're going to be calling it pigeon today for our theme. Three more breaths. Slowly start to lift. And we'll stack that right hand behind us. Now I kind of stack more onto the finger pads for this. The left arm will sweep open, and then the inhale will lift us off the ground and stretch the front of the body. And then as we exhale, we sit down and wave that left arm back. Two more. Once you come back down, the feet will come out in front, and we're going to lift up towards a squat. So if you can't manage to hold squat with your seat off the floor, just stay down, creating that same position for the lower body. Or if you need a block to sit on, you can make it more restorative. I'm going to be active in mine today, meaning my elbows are pushing to widen the thighs and my head stays up. But you can be yin, bowing your head to prayer hands, if that's your preference. I've mentioned this in the past, but in cultures where people wash their clothes from a squat, eliminate waste this way, go through the rice fields this way, or wash clothes this way. The elderly need less back support and stay more independent in their later years. I watched a documentary about that and I found it fascinating. So this is something we should try to continue to do throughout our lives. It's not just good for the hips, but good for the back. Bring the hands down. Start to spin your feet so the toes point forward. And you can have a soft bend in the knees here. We're going to do a wide stance, dangling or Uttanasana. Again, you can choose the legs to be active or a little bit more passive. And I would definitely loosen the shoulders, sometimes just giving them a little rolling or wiggling can help to make sure that you're not locking the arms in any way. Same with your head and neck. Slow, deep breathing. Now, go ahead and heel toe the feet more together. Ground and root your feet so that you are using the muscles through the legs and come halfway up. Ardha Uttanasana. As you exhale, roll back down, keeping your legs elongated. And then on your next inhale, come up to upward worship. Palms join together at the top. And then exhale, hinge forward again, taking an active Uttanasana. Inhale, provide space between the two halves of the body as you lift halfway. And then exhale, close the gap in between. Inhale, step back, plank. When you pause in plank, make sure you're using the core of the body, meaning the abdominals and the quads. Shift forward, lower down to chaturanga, land your knees, and then push the heart up. The pelvis is lifted off the floor to upward facing dog. Now we're going to hold this a couple more breaths today. This will help to prepare us for the upward pigeon. Curl your toes under and launch all the way back to downward facing dog. When you line up to downward facing dog, push deep into your palms. Drive your thighs back. Let your head go. Remember, the breath can bring in more peace. Peace being one of the symbols of the dove and pigeon. And the white color represents purity and innocence. All right, inhale, we're going to lift the left leg halfway up. You don't have to lift it extremely high because we're just bringing that shin just behind the wrist. Now lower the right knee because we're going to go to deer first. So push away from your right hand so that you sit down on the left side of your buttocks. And then the right knee is bent. See, the heel isn't close to the hip like it was earlier. And we're angled a little bit for deer. But we're going to fold over that left shin, kind of like we did in half pigeon, but you'll notice it's a different feel. It's a different alignment. It's a different pose with a different intention. So go as low or as deep as you want, as long as it doesn't have a negative effect of the breath. You may not get as pronounced of a sensation in this pose like you did the other one. But just know we are still lubricating the joints. We are still working the fascia. We are still getting an emotional detox. So with this little compression of us folding over the hip this way, when we release and come out of this position, it's going to create this nice flush. So with the stretch, increase circulation and energy flood into the area, and then we release, it disperses, right? It will take some of those toxins and tension away. It's also going to bring in some vital nutrients with that fresh circulation. All right, we're going to manage our way out of deer by first lifting and propping the upper body upward. And then remember, we landed on top of that right knee. So spin your hands to face the front of the mat. Roll back so the hips are square. You're on the right knee. The toes are tucked. And you're stepping right to plank. Exhale, chaturanga. Inhale to up dog. We're not holding it this time. We're rolling right back to downward facing dog. And this time the inhale will lift the right leg halfway up. The right shin will swing through behind the hands. And then we'll sink to the left knee, keeping the back toes curled under so that we can slowly spin down to the right hip, and then you can land on the inside of that left foot. Lift upward and then fold downward over the right calf and shin to deer. Use your breath to help to micromanage the mind and deter away from the thoughts that want to distract. Inhale, slowly lift us up. And then use your right hand to push away from the right hip, return to that left knee and the back toes tucked. We'll step into our plank position. Streamline shoulders over wrist. Rock forward, lower down to chaturanga. Inhale to upward facing dog. And exhale to downward facing dog. So from that vinyasa flow, root the hands and feet to fly upward through your seat. Make sure there's not an extreme space between the big toes. If there is, narrow that distance. We're going to lift the left leg up, this time pointing the toes. If you would like a downward scorpion, feel free to roll into it. But we're not going to hold it. We're going to unwind and come down to the knees. So I'm going to give you a choice. For those that want to do regular pigeon, you can do regular pigeon. However, if you want it to be a little bit more restorative, I would gather the blocks, gather the bolster, and I'll talk you through this really quick. So if you step the left foot over, heel toe it across so that you're landing on top, your blocks can be set in front of you, and then you can stack on your forearms. And this may be a better hold for you. If you don't want it to be restorative in nature, and you want it to be more yin-like, where it's just you in gravity, then of course, bring that left knee forward. Make sure it's angled slightly to the left side, and then you can fold down as well. While you're here in pigeon pose, what we reference as swan in yin, I've shared this story in the past, but you may not remember it. We mentioned that the dove and the pigeon were the first domesticated birds, but I love knowing that in India, there's a lot of poverty, and there's a lot of riches in India, but there's also a lot of poverty in India. And some of the ones that are in more poverty that have children, just like any other parent wanting to make their children happy, their children eventually want a pet, right? And one of the easiest things for them to use as a pet is to catch a pigeon. And the mothers will loosely tie a string or twine around the bird's feathers so that it can't fly away. And just like we as parents have gotten pets for our children, right? The novelty kind of wears off after a while. They promise and promise, please get me a dog. I promise I'll help take care of it. And then of course, who ends up taking care of it but the parents. So eventually, whenever the novelty is worn off, all they do is clip the string from the wings and then the bird is free again. So with that in mind, I want you to think about anything that may be pigeonholing you somehow, in some way, to some degree. It could be limiting beliefs that you've outgrown. It could be an innumerable amount of things, but just reflect on that while you're here. Now on your next in-breath, I want you to come up just a little bit, right? Maybe to Sphinx arms, and it's okay to stay on the blocks. Now, if you're on the floor, you're gonna just travel over to your right so that your belly's kind of pouring over that left foot in front. Same thing with the bolster. If you're on the bolster, you're just gonna come up onto your hands, move the blocks over in that direction of the foot, and then you'll restack the arms there. Another thing that that bolster provides is space for the knee, so there's not as much flexion. On your next inhale, we're gonna prop ourselves up and we're gonna go for upward pigeon now, or upward swan. So if you have, well, let me show you this way first. If you're just doing it the yin way, you're just gonna walk the hands up. You're trying to be active now, lifting through the pelvic floor, opening up your arms. Same thing if you were in the restorative variation. Maybe you can stack the fingers on top of the prop. Maybe you can fly your arms up. Maybe you can stick out your chest, right? Like a robust pigeon. And then exhale, the hands come down. All right, so if you were in the restorative, gently come out of it, heel toeing the left foot in front, sliding the bolster away. Those of you in pigeon can just tuck your toes under, and we're coming back to plank. Exhale, shift forward, lower down like a low push-up. Inhale, rise to Urdhva Mukha Svanasana. And exhale, rolling back to Adho Mukha Svanasana. Make sure there's a slimmer space between the feet, because now we're going to lift the right leg, pointing the toes, perhaps rolling into downward scorpion. And there are some days that doesn't feel good to me. So check in with your own body. You can leave it out. And then sit down on your knees to tabletop. Unless you're going to be in, and you can go ahead and create your pigeon going straight down. If you land to your knees, this is a good time if you're going to be restorative to hop the right foot over. You kind of go into that half lunge, heel toe the foot, so that you're kind of sitting on the prop. And then of course the blocks are useful to go underneath your forearms. So definitely add that in if you need it. And I'll give you some quiet time here. So we're going to casually just lift a little if you're all the way down. And this time we're going to bring the blocks with us if you're using those. Or just walk the Sphinx arms or hands over so that you're hovering over the right foot. Inhale, walk over to center, and then we'll do the upward variation. So again, if you're using the bolster, your hands can just walk closer to you or prop onto that pillow. And if you're doing the yin version, you are anchoring. This is more active. You're pushing down through your legs. You're driving up through the pelvic floor, up through your waistline, maybe freeing up the arms, and maybe creating a little bit fuller of a chest to mimic the pigeon. And then exhale, bring the hands down. If you're in that restorative version, lift the right knee, take your time backing up into half lunge. And then taking it to table. The rest of us are gonna just plop down onto the right hip and send the legs out in front. All right, we're gonna do a forward fold. And you're gonna take your hands up underneath the flesh of the buttocks, pull it out from underneath, lift the arms up, and then exhale, take caterpillar. And if you have a history of herniated disc, you will activate your legs, lift your toes, keep your back straighter or more neutral. Otherwise, you can let go and drape and let the head get heavy. Inhale, slowly come up. Now I'm going to give you a choice for this final pose. You can take your knees or your shins rather off to the left and do a simple twist like this. But the other example I'm going to show you, I'm going to give you a couple angles, would be bringing the left ankle alongside your hip like half saddle, splaying open through that right knee, picking up that foot and taking it to half lotus on your lap, and then twisting to the right. I'm not going to hold this one as long. Take one more breath. Exhale, unwind. Slip the 1.5 lotus off first. Lean to that right hip to straighten the left leg. And then, of course, you can create a simpler movement here in twist. Or you can try bringing the right ankle alongside the hip, splaying open through the left so that you can take half Padmasana and then twist left. Sorry if you hear Gabriel getting his lunch. He's having a late lunch today because they're doing testing all week. And he had a writing test this morning and it's changed his schedule around. As you exhale, unwind. You can let that half lotus foot fall away. And then we're ready for Shavasana. If you feel like you want a restorative back bend, place it under your spine. Although we did a lot with the knees today, so I thought you might enjoy just the simpler variation of bolster under the knees to give them a little love and support. And then you can roll back. As soon as you roll down to the ground, close and rest your eyes, letting your hands rest on your belly. Feeling the belly balloon up into the hands as you breathe in, and fall gently away from the hands as you breathe out. Loosening your jaw, relaxing the muscles of the face. I think we all know the symbol of the dove holding the branch. And that may be an image that comes to your mind that you want to meditate on. Perhaps it's just part of the symbology, breathing your way into a state of peace, the expression of love or fertility, mercy, freedom. You could even pick one of those words and repeat it over and over like a mantra in your mind. And the sound of the mindfulness bell chiming. Begin to deepen the flow of your breath. Begin to awaken hands and feet. Exiting the pose that you chose to come up to a formal seat. When you come up to sit, I know that when we place the wings, the hands over the heart like this, I often say angel wings, but today it's going to be our white winged dove. So left hand over the heart, right hand on top of that. Now I have Stevie Nicks in my head saying white winged dove. So today is Earth Day. So I hope that you get outside and marvel in nature, maybe even just shedding your shoes and walking across your yard to do some grounding and earthing. Maybe you feel inspired to plant some new things in your garden or some flowers in front of your home. Let's all try to get outdoors at least for a little bit today to celebrate Mother Gaia and all that she offers us. Bring your hands now to prayer position at your heart. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Namaste.